My name is Relaina Johnston. This is my Sign to Voice Simultaneous lecture. It's an introduction to deaf people. Hi everyone, thank you for coming to the orientation today. Okay, right now the interpreter is voice off because I want to ask you some questions about what you think the interpreter's role is here. So I'm just curious. Okay, the interpreter, please go ahead and start interpreting. So somebody approached me and said, the interpreter, I was just curious who the interpreter is for. And some people think the interpreter is for me because I don't speak. But really, the interpreter is also for the hearing audience as well, because the hearing audience does not sign. And so the interpreter is not just accommodating me because I don't speak. The interpreter is also accommodating hearing people who do not sign. So it's a mutual, we both need the interpreters, not just for me and not just for you. So today, part of this orientation, I'd like to ask a few questions, and it's a multiple choice question. Please keep in mind that don't feel like you're getting an A or a B or an F or anything. This is not a pass or fail test at all. This is just to give you some ideas and some information, and to expose you to some different new ideas and new ways of thinking, so that hopefully when you leave, you'll go out and be interested in learning more. Another thing, I think it's very important, I just want you all to know that if you have any questions, please let me know. It's very important for you. Some of the ideas you're going to be learning here will be new information and new concepts, and maybe you have a question. You need to get those questions answered before you leave, so please feel free at any time to ask me any questions. Those are two really important things to remember about today. So I'm going to go ahead and ask a question, and please answer with the best, or what you feel is the most appropriate choice. Okay, let me see. So the first question is the best word that describes the word deaf? The first option, deaf. Second, hard of hearing. Third, hearing impaired. 4, physically disabled. And 5, you don't know. How many of you think that the first option, deaf, is correct? How many? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, around 10. Good. How many of you believe that the second answer is the best? How many of you think it's hard of hearing? Oh, come on, y'all. Pay attention. I'm seeing who's participating, okay? What about the third answer? What about hearing impaired? Round 3? 3 of you think it's hearing impaired. For number 4, that option was physically disabled. How many of you believe that is the best word? Okay, nobody. And 5, how many of you just don't know? Let me see your hands. Okay. All right. Well, the most appropriate answer is the first choice, which is deaf. Deaf gives a very clear picture of a person who is very active in the deaf community, strongly identifies with deaf culture. You are a deaf person, so that's the best answer. Here in America, there are about 6 million people who are deaf, and within these 6 million, There are some subcategories of whether they're deaf or hard of hearing, specifically. About 300,000 um, have a hearing loss of some sort, and about 40,000 identify themselves as being deaf. And later I will break down some categories for you all. My next question is, how many of you believe that there is one universal sign language in the world? This is a true or false question. How many of you believe that this is true? How many of you think this is false? Oh, okay. All of you believe that this is false. And you're all right. There are very many different sign languages in the world. Here in America, we use ASL for almost everything, but because it is its own language after all. It has its own grammar and syntax and facial expressions, body movements, and you can't just learn sign language though from watching an interpreter and copying everything they do though. Facial expressions, body movements, everything in sign language is so important. And you can't just, if you're voice interpreting, you can't just start speaking as soon as you hear them signing. You have to wait and get a clear picture of what they're saying. For example, the English word run, R-U-N. 3 letters, but there can be multiple meanings for this word. For example, you might have a run in your stocking, or you may have a runny nose. You may be running a business, or people might actually be physically running. And it's the interpreter's job to figure out which sign best will match this concept of run in what particular context. Now, there's a popular belief that all deaf people are very skilled in reading lips. So, how many of you, by show of hands, believe that this is true? How many of you think it's false? Okay, let's see, about 8 or 9 of you. The answer is false. Research shows that reading lips, you only get about 30% of what the message is. And the rest of it's kind of lost. It's a guesswork really. You don't really know, and you're really just trying to guess what people are saying. And some people, can get about 30% in. Now I'm going to say 2 words. The first word and the second word. Okay, I want you to guess what this first word was here. Okay, you thought it was 10, but somebody else thought it was test. Somebody else thought it was something else. All right, well, let's give it the second word a shot. Wait, what do you think I said? Sex? Somebody says sex. Anybody else? 6? Well, really, the first word that I said was 6, and the second word that I said was sex. Now, really, imagine this. Somebody is there and they're trying to read lips, but you might be, you're understanding that word, you're understanding that sentence, you're understanding that phrase, you're doing fine, and then a word comes up and you don't know what it is. And so that part of the message could be omitted because you don't know what that word is, and it's very frustrating. And for example, you might go into a store and ask how much the total is, and the person will say 50, and so it's like, okay, so you go and get ready to pay for that, and you hand them $50, and what the person really said was 15. And that's really an awkward situation. That person, they could be taken advantage of, hopefully not, but still, it is a big difference. So, how many of you think that the job of interpreting is simply copy signing what the person is saying? How many of you think that's true? And how many of you think that's false? Oh, there's about half of you think that it's true and half of you think it's false. Well, the correct answer is no, that's false. That's impossible. Just you copy signing, that's not the job of interpreting. There's so much more involved in the act of interpreting. There's the linguistics to think of. There's so many processes that go into interpreting. You have to read the person's body language to make sure that you're matching affect correctly. You have to make sure that your sentences are grammatically correct and that they make sense and that they are idiomatic. Interpreters' jobs can be really hard, and so that's how come there are now some interpreter training programs. Okay, I have another question. This is a true and false question as well. If you see a deaf person or a person who is wearing a hearing aid or hearing device, are you going to assume that they can speak? True or false? Let's see those hands. Okay, about 6 of you say that's true. How many of you believe it's false? 2? Okay, some of you aren't answering. Does that mean that you're thinking about it? The answer is false. I mean, not always. Please keep in mind, okay, hold on just a minute. Let me look at my notes here. We talked about the different groups. And there's subgroups of the different, like, hearing loss categories. And of course, we have deaf, we have hard of hearing, and we have a group that are late deafened people, where they recently have lost their hearing. And the group who are deaf, they strongly identify with deaf culture. They may have gone to schools for the deaf, and they may have lost their hearing for a variety of reasons. They could have had a childhood illness, maybe German measles. Then there's, of course, the hearing people, and there's also different subcategories within hard of hearing. There are people who are hard of hearing. They might have a hearing aid or a different hearing device. They may have gone to schools for the deaf, and their main mode of communication could be ASL. And then there's the other group where they wear hearing aid and they rely on English mostly as their main mode of communication. And of course, the same as deaf, they could have lost their hearing for a variety of reasons. Maybe an infection or some childhood illness, who knows. And then of course we have late deafened people. These are individuals who were born hearing, grown up hearing all their life, and then there might have been an accident, something drastic could have happened that just suddenly they've lost their hearing. I feel that it's probably the worst experience because of deaf people. They grew up deaf and that's who they are, and that's fine. And for late deafened people, it can be a very, very drastic change. And so I think it's important to compare these two ideas. Oh, halfway finished.